Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Welcome to Piercing the Veil tonight, and we got a really nice guest. I've been chatting with him in the background, and if you noticed our Dionyson Demon Goggles thumbnail, it's from John Vandeventer, and we're going to be discussing the goggles. And if you can go to his website and everything, the relicbooks.com, and check out his stuff. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that. I'll give John a chance to talk about his history and where he's from and stuff. And I'll just go ahead and bring him up. And I just wanted to say hi to everybody in chat. I might not be able to say hi to everybody, but if you have any questions for us or John, then go ahead and put it in capitals, and I'll try to bring it up and we'll discuss it. And we'll just go ahead and bring John up. Hi, John.
Hey, Gerald. Thanks for having me.
Good. I like I was talking to you. I saw you on Jessica's show, and I really connected with what you guys were all talking about, and I thought we'd do a show on it and dive into this and see where we go. I mean, we might venture off of the goggles and go into other areas, but we'll start off definitely with the red goggles.
Awesome. Well, I'm no expert on the goggles, and but I have done a little studying on it, and been on Jessica's show about it. I thought it was a pretty interesting thing, and honestly, before that episode, I had never heard of them. So, kind of an interesting subject, and she was saying that was one of her most popular shows, so people must have an interest in it.
Yeah, it was a really good show. I mean, that's what kind of got me. I mean, I'd heard of them before, but I never really looked into them till you guys did your show. Then I started digging into it. I was like, man, this is really interesting. And it kind of fits in with everything that we look into anyway, dimensions and, it's just all kinds of stuff that you can tie off of Dionyson Goggles. So,
well, as I was researching, Gerald, when Jessica first mentioned them to me, she was talking about how people can see into other dimensions with them. And because the subject of my novels, that really interests me. And I jumped on. And then as the research I have done on it, I mean, it's not extensive, but they seem to be used mainly by ghost hunters and stuff, or people. They're also called aura glasses and spirit glasses, or spirit goggles, or aura goggles. Supposedly, you can see people's auras with it, or the auras of any living thing. You can buy them on Amazon, as far as I know. I found a link on Amazon where you can get them with ratings, just like a book. You got some rating them at 5 and some rating them at 1. So
yeah, the Amazon, I've looked them up. I've seen them on Amazon. I've seen them on other sites, but I just don't trust them to be real glasses. I mean, I know they have the blue, they have the red lenses, whatever you want to get, but there is a few places that you find that actually say it's really the Dicyanin glasses or goggles.
Well,
everything I've read, unless they use the new synthetic way of doing it, if you use the real Dicyanin, then it breaks down over time. That's why it's hard when people buy the old relic ones, that the lenses aren't really working right because it's all broken down.
Well, and also I've been seeing where Dicyanin is illegal in the United States. These things go back to 1911. There was a guy, he worked at the St. Thomas Hospital in London. He was in charge of electrotherapy. Can you imagine what that was back in 1911? And they made these things, and there was different colors, I think blue, red, green, part of it. And they did a study with them, and they were looking at human auras. In fact, he did the first Western paper published on the human aura. And that's what they were using those lenses for. Now, they said if you looked at them a lot, you would get headaches, or you would get ill. But here's something I thought was funny. They said if you used them often enough, though, your eyes would train out where you could see the aura without the use of the lenses. And they were called, his name was Walter John Kilner. And they called the lenses, or the goggles at that time, Hilner lenses or Hilner slides. So
Right.
I thought it was funny because he said if with enough training you could see these auras without the use of the glasses. Well, I don't know if you read that far on the Amazon link about the glasses, but all the 1-star ratings, people are saying, no, no, they don't work. I didn't see nothing. I gave them back. And a lot of the 5-star ratings said, well, I called the company because mine didn't work. But after they trained me a couple of times on how to use them, now I can see things.
Yeah.
So it kind of ties back to the original story coming from 1911. So who knows?
Now I found this online, and I think that's one of the original papers. And this is from a Merle. And if you read that, it talks all about the dicyanin and how the process and what it enables you to see the different wavelengths and stuff going through. And this was for camera, though. This is how they originally supposedly developed it for the camera lenses to be able to see outside the spectrum of our normal eyes to enhance the pictures.
Right. Well, and that's according to what I've read too. You're talking frequencies and vibrations. They all have, they all enter into what we see and how we perceive things, how we react to things. And part of the deal with these lenses was they would block out UV and IR light, allowing you to see this other spectrum. And it's still, I don't know. It kind of reminds me though of the old red and blue glasses back in the 50s and 60s for the 3D movies. I mean, I
Right.
remember the 70s even at drive-ins a couple times we'd have a 3D movie. And then I'm thinking about we're in the path of the eclipse tomorrow, and my wife brought home some eclipse glasses, and they're dark and they're black, but they're cardboard. They just remind me of those 3D glasses. I'm like, I don't know if I want to look up at that thing with those.
Yeah,
Pardon?
who knows what you'll see.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I have a couple pictures also of some of the supposed old glasses that they're talking about.
Right.
Now these have the red lens, but I don't think there any electronics in these, but there could be. Then
Yeah,
these are
look at
just
that. That looks like
goggles with red lenses.
off Raiders of the Lost Ark or something there.
Yeah. But these, I think, are the ones they're talking about that they had during the Vietnam War.
Wow.
That they're actually night vision with the red lenses.
Huh.
And that's
Yeah,
interesting. That
Jessica
Vietnam
mentioned that.
story of the soldiers is really interesting. We'll get into that as we get going.
Yeah, I remember Jessica talking about those, and that was really interesting. The stories about the night goggles and stuff, and like I was saying earlier, people that seem to use them most are ghost hunters, and I saw where a lot of UFO investigators and hunters use them as well. So if you're getting UFO activity or you're seeing things, in the sky in your part, that might be something to have. But
See,
like,
our night vision, we have psionics, and we also have ATN binoculars that are night vision. And you can switch from the black and white to a green screen, and the green screen is really, I mean, you see so much stuff going on in the sky with
yeah,
the green.
yeah, they're not real expensive. I got a pair where you can use green screen or infrared. The range on them isn't very good. And, after looking through them a few nights, I thought, well, if anything's that close to me, I don't want to see it anyway. No further than they go out. It's like the ghost, I don't mind going out and doing a little Bigfoot hunting. I love to sit out and look for UFOs and watch the stars, but I'm not interested in ghost hunting. So the people, the people buying them for that, more power to you. But I don't need them because I'm not going to go ghost hunting. I don't want to see one. So
We use ours outside mostly to look at the fields and the sky, and we'll see orbs and stuff that appear to be orbs, floating through, but we can't see them with the naked eye. We can only see them through the night vision. So we're kind of wondering, what is it? What are we really seeing? Because it's not visible to our naked eye.
Well, do you recall a few years back when the Navy was releasing all the videos of the UFOs, and you
Yeah.
saw what was taken from the aircraft? Well, there was one that was taken from a warship, and I don't think it was carrier. I think it was a cruiser of some type. But did you see the triangle things flying over the cruiser? And they had
Yes.
it on green screen, and they couldn't see it otherwise. But through the green screen, they could see it. They almost look like guitar picks, the craft.
Oh, yeah.
So you
I mean,
noticed something with the green screen.
I've always thought about, since we're talking about the cyan and demon goggles, why everybody's had these virtual headsets or these things, or why haven't we got an electronically enhanced to be able to see outside of our UV range and go into the IR and the red spectrum of the light to see. I mean, maybe they don't want us to, or maybe we don't want to see them. I don't know, but
Yeah, well, probably a little bit of both. I don't know. As I said, my first understanding on them was you could see into another dimension, and I'm thinking, well, that's all it takes to see into another dimension. Why do we need things like CERN and astrophysics, things like
right.
that? But if I could see into another dimension, I'm not real sure I'd want to. I'm not sure I'd be able to be looking into the dimension I'd want to witness, so it's hard to say.
That reminds me of we talked about earlier before the show about how I always listened to Art Bell and George Norrie on Coast to Coast, and one of the stories that always sticks out to me whenever we talk about dimensions and all that stuff was a Tom Horn story about where the mother was having eye problems and they went to the optometrist or the eye doctor and they gave her eye drops. And when she put the eye drops on, after that she started like being out of sorts. She just acted uncomfortable. She'd be sitting there on the couch or watching TV. And finally, the son asked the mom, what's going on? Do you feel all right? Something going on? She goes, well, who are all these people? And
Oh,
he's like, what people? She goes, well, there's all these people wandering around in our house, going in and out. And he goes, there's no one here, Mom. She goes, I see them. There's people walking everywhere. And it turns out it was the eye drops did something to her eyes to visibly see the spectrum.
well, there you go. And see, we're back to the vibrations and frequencies, and yeah, it's nuts. It's kind of scary. Yeah, I don't know if I want that ability or not.
I know. Are you really prepared for what you might see? Because it shakes. I mean, just like the military, the people that supposedly had these goggles on, it affected them months and for a long period of time after they didn't even wear the goggles. I mean, it was just a mind game that, this affects you so deep.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you got to wonder, they're probably looking at things their weapons wouldn't affect too. So, I mean, you got to wonder how much interaction you have in their dimension or they have in yours. Somebody's going to have more control than the other, I would think. One side or the other. But then again, maybe they're walking around and they don't see us. So you just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many unanswered questions. We'll never know the answers. Probably, I don't think. Not in the living on the earth, and not in this realm. We won't know, but it's
Well,
definitely interesting to talk about.
oh, it is. I even and I want to stay on subject, but real quick, since we're talking dimensions, in one of my books, they captured a UFO. Well, they've actually found one, and after they're figuring out how to get things going, it's like 2 books later before they figure this out. But they're able to change a dimension inside the spaceship, inside the flying saucer, where it's 30 feet in circumference outside physically. They can bang it out to 90 feet internally by
Yeah.
activating this dimensional thing, and it freaks everybody out the first time they're in it because going all of a sudden, boom, the thing's bigger than the little hangar area they got it parked in. So the dimension stuff fascinates me to no end because of all the possibilities.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot on other shows where people brought up when they've been abducted or whatever. They're in this what looks to be a small ship, but then when they go in there, it's like a football stadium.
Yeah,
It's like never ending. They go through all these other passages, or they have these great big wide open areas. It's like there's no way that could be inside this ship.
yeah. It's crazy the stuff you can work with in that. Too, on the UFO abduction, something that fascinated me when I started reading more about the abductions and the things that people go through is one guy had mentioned in a book, and I forget which book it was, but he said if you took the modern day UFO abduction scenario and you put it with a medieval incubus or succubus attack, it's basically the same story.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I never thought about it that way. It's kind of weird.
Wow. So let's get back into the goggles a little bit, then we'll venture off into something else if it comes up. So where are we at on as far as your notes or what you want to talk about? I don't know
Well,
if you got anything else, and we'll go into the Vietnam.
they've been around for a long time now. Yeah, I'd like to hear more about the Vietnam. That's something I didn't study on too much. Um, but again, you're talking about it's taking away the UV and IR light or spectrum to be able to see what they're seeing. And as far as the stuff I've researched, it's mainly people are using it to look at auras or search for ghosts or UFOs. I haven't found anything on actually seeing into other dimensions. Have you?
No, just just the stories online where people make reels or whatever and talk about the original goggles and the possibility of looking into dimensions. And then they tie it in obviously with the Vietnam story.
Well, okay. Do you mind telling? I know this is your show, but do you mind telling the Vietnam story? What you know
Well,
of it?
no, well, I was hoping to get into this, so I didn't know if you had any research into it or not. But from what I've read and watched online for quite a while now, well, since you and Jessica's story, that the helicopters were going out flying into a relatively peaceful area that wasn't really part of the confrontation going on. They were doing patrols outside the border of the war zone, and the gunner had these Dicyanin goggles that were issued to him by the military, but the pilots and stuff were restricted from using them because it affected your vision and stuff. So they didn't have the pilots wearing them, just the gunners and other ground troops were wearing them also at the time. Well, they're flying around doing this patrol. There's like 6 helicopters flying, and the gunner started going crazy and started shooting this 50 caliber machine gunner, on board out the back, or it might have been the right side, or one of the doorways or something. And he just kept screaming about demons. They're coming to get us. And he's just pumping these rounds, and not towards the ground, is up, level with the helicopter, right out the door, like it was coming straight towards the door.
You know what?
And
That
they
does.
finally, go ahead.
Yeah, that does sound familiar. And didn't he have to be treated, or did
Yeah.
a breakdown of some kind? Or
So while this was going on, the leader, I don't know if it was a pilot or another captain or something on board, told him to take the goggles off, take those goggles off. Well, when he took them off, he couldn't see them no more.
right?
And then that person put the goggles on, and what's the strange thing? He saw the demon or whatever flying. So it seemed like, from what they were saying, is that as soon as you put the goggles on, you either raise your vibration or you enter their dimension where they can actually see you, and they know that you know that they're there. So that's why they start coming to you.
That's nuts. Okay, so actually, to me, that does sound like a dimensional viewing. Seeing another dimension. Um, yeah, that's crazy. There's a lot of weird stuff out of Vietnam. the rock apes, the UFO attacks around Tiger Island in '68. There is so much stuff that happened in that war, and you're just now starting to hear about it, and it's pretty cool. And I say it's pretty cool. It probably wasn't cool for the people who had to go through it because life was already hard enough, having it in Vietnam and in combat. So, yeah, it was probably a little cavalier of me to say, but there's some interesting stuff out of there.
So these goggles, so they ended up seeing them, and they all reported and that it was coming out of the treetop. So it's like they were, whatever it was coming out of the tops of the trees towards them, not from the ground, not flying around, but they were actually coming from the trees to them.
Oh, that's
and the
nuts.
same thing with the troops on the ground. When the ones that were wearing them there, they didn't see anything ground level. It's like everything came and attacked them from the top of the trees. So that leads me to believe, okay, is it something living in the trees that we can't perceive in our eyesight, like elementals, maybe?
That's what it sounds like. Sounds like they're here and you can't see them unless, and they must, they're in another spectrum of light that our eyes don't pick up. And evidently, you can't see them with infrared, and you can't see them with the green goggles, the starlight scopes, or low light scopes.
So with all these red dicyanin, they started having all these reports finally coming in. They were finally allowing these reports to be filed because they were kind of restricting them, I guess, or nobody kind of like UFO reports in airplanes. Nobody really wants to put it on record that it's out there. But then the military started finally getting all these reports of everybody was wearing these goggles over a period of time, would see these demons or gargoyles or whatever they're calling them. So they took them away from them, and that's when we came out with the starlight or the green night vision. Well, guess what? The green night vision, they started reporting seeing UFOs in the skies.
That's crazy. That's nuts. And especially the military guys, they're not going to want to fess up to seeing things like that. Except, if you're in combat and you're firing a weapon, by then the cat's out of the bags. But you're right about pilots and stuff not wanting to, pilots, anybody, ground crew at airports or air bases even. Well, now I guess the good question would be is to find somebody that has either been in or knows somebody in the special forces community. Because I would think if those things are out there, that's who'd have them. If anybody has need for them, I had two sons that were combat soldiers in Iraq, and they never mentioned anything. They were using the standard night vision or IR stuff when they were out at night. So
I'm assuming the ones that they're using today obviously is more advanced, and this probably doesn't have that spectrum or that, because you don't hear of any reports of it now.
No, you don't. And now you get, we know where initially it came from, this guy in London, this doctor, but now you got to wonder too, have they found any, like supposedly if you listen like Bob Lazar about Area 51, wonder if they found anything like those in these UFOs supposedly.
Right.
I mean, is that something that like extraterrestrials or other alien type beings would have or develop? It's kind of weird. Now, if you're looking into them and you're seeing things like demons, that would again suggest to me it's some kind of angel technology or fallen angel technology. Who knows? It's interesting though.
Well, that was brought up also about the Nephilim, the fallen angels, and they some of the things I read talked about, obviously, the Nephilim are the fallen angels, and Lucifer or Satan was, the light, the bearer of light, and wasn't cast to hell, but cast to this earth. So are these demons actually the fallen angels that these goggles are allowing you to see? So angels
Well,
probably could be in a different dimension or different, frequency that we can't see until we put those goggles on.
well, I don't want to turn into theology, but the Nephilim were actually the offspring of the fallen angels that came down and um, had sex with human females.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I said that wrong. Yes, you're
Yeah.
correct.
And now, if you go in the Hebrew text, if you were to go back in the first century and ask any Hebrew guy, "Hey, what's a demon?" They believe that the demons, and they claim the demons are the disembodied spirit of the Nephilim, because once they die, since they're a bastardization, they weren't made by God. They were made through the demonic union or diabolical union. There's no place in them for heaven, or there's no place in them in heaven or hell, and so they're floating the earth. And that's supposedly that's the original descriptions of what demons actually are. Because I think when I was, in my younger days, like when The Exorcist came out, loved your music at the beginning. By the way, took me back to 1972. But uh, I always assumed that demons and fallen angels were one and the same, but they're not. The fallen angel is a much more potent, mightier being than a mere demon. But the fact that you see these things with these goggles on makes me wonder, if it is some kind of a technology from them.
Right. And also, I kind of wonder, maybe it's not necessarily the fallen angels or anything. Maybe it's the elementals. Maybe they're seeing, wood spirits or tree spirits coming out. It could be a type of elemental that this is allowing you to see that you normally wouldn't see, unless you're open to that vibration or that dimension. If you raise your consciousness, maybe that's when the elementals come out to you. Well, maybe these goggles enhance that and will allow just anybody to see the elementals or whatever it is.
Lately I've been watching a lot of YouTube late at night on TV, and last night I found something about a CIA guy, and it was a paranormal thing, dealing with paranormal stuff, and he got to this story about meeting this, and I think it was an elemental. I didn't get that part because I was falling asleep. I was nodding off, but I was really interested. But it was like this tree creature he was talking to. They had captured, and when you said elementals, that just popped in my head. I got to go back this evening and watch the rest of that. Um, I'll try and remember and send you the link. You might be interested in it too.
All right. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, even like you're bringing up paranormal. So even these devices or the cameras that they use to pick up, they have the stick figures, showing where things are. Well, maybe some of these encounters are because of being able to see into this, like the goggles, see into their realm. You can pick up and sense them. I mean, it's all electromagnetic, fields anyway, whether we're seeing light, which is electromagnetic, and we're seeing vibrations or paranormal stuff, it all comes into vibrations and frequencies too.
Well, there's two schools of thought on this dicyanin, why it's illegal to have the uh, the solution in the United States. There's two reasons: A, it allows user to peer into the spiritual realm, and B, it's highly toxic. Well, B, highly toxic, that's never been a thing as far back as 1911. They didn't care back in those days. And even this Walter Kilner man said back then that dicyanin wasn't available in the United States because it allowed you to see into the spiritual realm, and the powers that be don't want you looking into the spiritual realm. So, and they probably don't, uh, information is a terrible thing for people to have it if you're trying to control them. So they
Right.
probably
Well,
don't want people looking into the spiritual realm. Yeah.
there's so many different stories out there and you don't know what exactly is true or wherever happened, because even the Vietnam story, I couldn't find any names of any of the members of the military or the helicopter crew that you can tie this story to, but yet it's floating out there everywhere. And then in the early 1900s, like you talked about, Kilner, and that's why they said that they got rid of dicyanin, is because it would break down over time, over periods, years. And so the goggles became ineffective. Well, supposedly the Vietnam era goggles really had the red dicyanin like the original, and they were wondering if it was releasing some kind of toxic fumes from the heat of the goggles being electronically controlled, that it was making some kind of fumes that could affect you almost like a drug or a hypnotic, so you can see. So, is it their mind? Is it the goggles? Is it a combination of both? So you're back to unanswered questions again.
Right. And we're still the generation that had lead paint on our cribs, and we got mercury in our cavity fillings.
Yeah, but that's what I blame, eating gumming off of the crib, and now I'm talking about UFOs and portals, and
there's a reason for this.
So the early 1900s is when they used the red. They developed it, or actually, then they went to blue coal tar, I believe, coal tar for the coat the lenses. They went from red to blue. Then the military.
It was the coal tar, right? Yes.
Then the military changed them finally to green, and that's when they started seeing UFOs.
Now, where did you get your glasses? Do you have glasses or goggles?
All we have is this current night vision electronics. So we don't have anything that's actually coated green or red or any of the original goggles. I've looked for them, but the ones that they say they're authentic or reproduction using the same formula, they're real expensive. So we haven't bought anything like that, and I don't want to buy any cheap ones, because then I'm thinking, well, they're probably not going to work, and I'm just wasting some money.
Well, I have a pair. Well, not a pair. It's a single scope. Old friend of mine who was in the Marine Corps had some, and it's one of the first generation Starlight scopes. And I'm wondering if that would be good for what you're doing. I need to take it out and just look at stars one night with it.
Because it is weird when you look up night vision. Some of them are the green lens, and some of them have the orangish red lens optics painted to it. So it would be interesting to see if it makes a difference between what you're seeing between the green and the red.
Right. It would. I don't know where anybody's going to find the red, though, unless you are in the military or some special group, shadow group or something that has a need for them. And like it's early, I don't even know if I want to look through. I don't want to see what's around me if it's that bad,
Then also online, I found it depends on if you use a U.S. manufacturer, that they don't use the real dicyanin formula or anything. But if you go to Germany, that supposedly their laws aren't as strict as ours about that, and you can get the goggles from there.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, then from Germany you can go to Amsterdam, and then you see all kinds of stuff with those goggles.
Yeah. With and without them, you might not want to see what you see.
Right.
So let's dive into portals or something, going along with all this elemental and dimensions and stuff. I don't really have anything else on the Vietnam other than what we've already told you, but the UFOs, they switched over to the green and had UFOs, and that's kind of where I left off.
Well, on the dicyanin, that story you told related, it came to me as you were into it, and I did figure, yes, I have heard that story. It may have been on Jessica's show, but I didn't see anything researching them with tying them to the military. Uh, but they seem interesting. But then again, if you can't get the real thing here, if we're not allowed to have it, you you got to wonder what people, how well these things people, how well these things work that people can buy on Amazon. Because um, actually, I did see on eBay they had like supposedly the original goggles. They were $280 a piece, so it's just going to be the coated lens. But if anybody's interested, look them up on eBay. You can find them there. Now, portals. Sure, I'd love to talk about portals.
Yeah, portals, whatever reason, our channel's usually UFO, Bigfoot, cryptids, or whatever anybody's experience is, but we always seem to go back to portals and elementals or Bigfoot using portals. Or
Well,
I mean, it's
yeah.
just fascinating that, the subject of portals and opening it up to a new realm or dimension. Or
Well, I found it. It's interesting because I use portals a lot in my novel series, and the series started out as just a Bigfoot story, but it kind of morphed into several other areas. Real quick, the third book in the series I have based in Heavener, Oklahoma, about 45 miles from here, and I have a friend that it's always a friend that knows a guy, but actually he's got some fossils from this place. But there's stories of a coal mine in Heavener, Oklahoma, since we talked about coal earlier. And there was guys, I think it was like 2 miles in, these guys back in 1925, they came upon these polished cement columns and cement walls. And the rock they were in was estimated to be 230 million years old.
wow.
So they came out, reported what they saw, and the government went back and sent some people in, and they flooded the mine, and it hadn't been reopened. And then there's a similar story of one about 65 miles to the west of that one. We kind of live in a triangle from those two things, and it makes you wonder what was down there, and how did it how did the people use that, or whatever creatures, whatever beings use those walls, use that. How did they go through? Why would they go through rock? And I'm sure probably the rock and sediment probably caved in around them, but um, it just makes you think what's been here before us and what's still
Right.
here. Um, what's going on with, well, like, okay, on the subject of portals, and you were talking about Vietnam earlier. In '68, I think it was June, there was a UFO um, incident in Vietnam, and it started out with two Navy river patrol boats. I think I can't remember the name of the river they were on, but they were about 25 miles from the coast, and they saw two UFOs came up on them, and they reported the UFOs as North Vietnamese helicopters, and that was kind of a code word supposedly in the military because North Vietnam didn't have helicopters. So they reported a helicopter, North Vietnamese helicopter, that was code for UFO. Well, the things got aggressive. They fired on them, and as they're firing on them, they're taking hits of their own bullets. If that makes sense, like every bullet they fire comes back, and they ended up sinking those patrol boats. And well, I think one sunk, and one was able to get out and got back and rescued the survivors from the other one. Then an hour later, an Australian destroyer, it was HMAS Hobart, was off Tiger Island. So this would have been about 40 miles or so out, west of west of where this incident took place on the river. Same thing, two UFOs. And I believe it was Air Force F4s that were stationed. I don't know if it was Da Nang or where they were stationed, were sent out that way. And again, the things got aggressive, and I believe the Hobart fired on them, and then one of the F4s fired on the UFO, but the Sparrow missile hit the Hobart
Ah,
and killed three Australian sailors. And the way they figured out it was the American missile was, I guess, a data plate from the missile or something was laying on the deck after the explosion. But you got to wonder how he has the Sparrow missile is radar guided, so he has a radar lock on whatever this UFO is, and the missile comes off and guides itself into the Hobart. Plus, with the old Sparrow, the backseater in the F4 had to keep the target painted. He had to keep the
right.
radar on the aerial target for the missile to guide to it. And it's like the missile comes off, instead of guiding it, it guides down, bang. And I believe it was right at the turret that would have been firing at these UFOs.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
yeah. And then the UFOs just disappeared,
Right.
and you got to wonder, okay, did they disappear? Did they go through a portal? Or did they just go at speed of light? And to me, a portal makes more sense to me than banging away at the speed of light. So, but that's
Right,
me.
because you just couldn't cloak out because you'd still be
Yeah.
there, and so the
Well,
missile
that's
would
what
probably
it's
still hit you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I tend to lean that my leaning is that UFOs are more of an interdimensional thing than a interstellar thing. Maybe or mainly because of the distances between stars and things like that. Now, I'm not saying they couldn't be from another star, but to me, it makes more sense that it's a dimensional thing. Or if they are from another star, they're skipping dimensions through a wormhole or something like that, like you see on, a Star Trek episode or
Right.
something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, they go into warp speed and they're able to go through a wormhole or whatever the portal is that opens Stargate or whatever. Probably not a Stargate. That's more of an earthly bound
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Well,
But yeah, I
too.
mean that's interesting. UFOs and military also, and whether we tied it in kind of with the Dicyanin glasses going to green, and you start seeing UFOs because we also got the World War II incident in San Francisco. I
Right.
think it was San Francisco where they were firing on an
That
unidentified object.
Los Angeles. Yeah. It was
Los Angeles, that's it. Yeah. So I mean that was the Battle of Los Angeles. That was a whole big thing where they were shooting rounds and rounds of artillery at this thing.
Yeah, and it went on for a couple of hours, and they did a lot of damage. The shells they shot up did a lot of damage to local homes and businesses, and it was kind of like Pearl Harbor. They reported that the Japanese bombed Honolulu, but what it was shells from the American ships that missed planes and went on travel and landed, in civilian areas and exploded. The Japanese didn't really bomb the civilian areas; they kept
Right.
everything in Pearl Harbor. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that went on for hours in Los Angeles, and there's reports that they said that they probably hit it, but then there's other reports where they said there was like a force field or something around it that protected the spaceship, and then there was ties to Roswell. They thought, well, maybe it was damaged in during that, but I don't think the two times correlate necessarily, but it was in the newspapers. They actually had pictures of the artillery being shot up at something, unless those were fake. I don't know. It could have been, but
Well, that's a pretty famous photograph, and for the camera capability at the time and a night shot, it looks pretty realistic to me. I mean, it looks more realistic than some of the UFO photos you see from the 50s and 60s, where you kind of
right.
tell, they did something there. laid a little laid a little light over that part of the exposure or something.
So your books talk about Bigfoot. What do you know about portals and Bigfoots and stuff like that? Do you have any connection
Well,
with your research for that?
yeah, I do. As I was telling you earlier, I never intended to be an author, or that was never on my bucket list. And an old friend talked me into writing a Bigfoot story, and long story short, it became a novel, and I kind of enjoyed writing it. So we moved up here to where the story takes place. And a couple of years ago, my publisher said, your books would do better if you just write more books and repair less printers. So I ended up retiring a year or two early and just write the whole time. And then, in my research for the books, I do a lot of research. I try to incorporate historic events or known events, of the paranormal in with my novels. And I remember reading uh, Ron Moorhead's book. I got it right here. What is that? Quantum Bigfoot, and he was
Yeah,
talking about
one Bigfoot.
mentioned portals and things like that. And then I don't know, have you ever listened to L.A. Marzulli?
Yes.
Okay, well, hey, he talks about Dr. I.D.E. Thomas, and he wrote the book. It's a UFO book, but it's nonfiction, and it's explaining portals and how he believes, it's the fallen angels using portals and things like that. The Omega Conspiracy, that's the name of that book. Well, so I'm looking at this, and so I started incorporating these things into my my Bigfoot story. In the first book, as I told you,
Well, let me bring up the picture of your books, and
okay,
then we'll start digging into it.
all
So,
right,
if anybody doesn't know, these are the series that John has been known as. The relics really took off, and so if you want to talk about them a little bit, then we'll go into your research and stuff.
okay. Well, yeah, Relics One, that was my first book. Kind of came by accident, and I found so much information in the Bigfoot community, and there's so many things to look at. The eight theory, the what they call the woo or spiritual theory, military operations. I just wanted to use everything. It came to be a big book, but funny, the people that read it say they'll read it in like 3 nights. They loved it. So I decided to keep going and made Relics 2, and that introduces the UFO side and start using use of portals, introduces a fallen angel character. Relics 3 ends up on that. The Shadow Chaser series takes place in the same areas as the Relic series, only it's kids. They're youth novels, but I got a lot of adults that love them too. And I call that series Relics Light. Now, my new novel in the fall, I intended to be a standalone novel, but as I started writing, I said, man, this is a big story. It's going to take a few books. And then I just decided, I sure could use this character and that character from Relics. So I'm bringing in the Relics characters 10 to 12 years after the original story of Relics. And it carries on. And again, it's portals, it's fallen angels. I don't want to, give the story away, but if people know what Project Bluebeam is, this is kind of a Project Bluebeam event put on by fallen angels instead of, a lot of people are saying Elon Musk or Bill Gates want to do it, but this is put on by fallen angels. And I'm currently in the sequel for it, and it's called the sequel is called it's the Fall to the Enigma Team. So I'm about a third of the way through that now, and there'll be a third. And I kind of see the need for Relics 4 now to bridge the two series together. So
Right.
there you have it.
All right. So everybody go over to relicsbooks.com, and I put it up on the screen for you. And
Thank you.
so if anybody hasn't read the books or heard about them, there you go. They can go over there and find some interesting reading and dive into these subjects we're talking about.
Yeah, and also on the website at relicsbook.com, if you have any questions or you want to, tell me if you loved the book or hated the book, if you hit contact, it'll give my email address if you hit the contact link. And like I say, books are one of those things people either love them or hate them. So, you get fans that, oh man, it was great, and then you'll get somebody back, what have you been smoking? So, but anyway, I appreciate even a bad review is necessary because you learn a lot from a bad review. So,
Right. You want to
yeah,
know what your audience thinks. I
yeah.
mean, that's
I
what
mean,
it's all about.
they're running good, about 4.2 to 4.5 stars. So I'm not complaining. But if you do have a critique of my writing or something, I'm always open to hear it. So don't be bashful. My feelings don't get hurt that easy.
So we brought up Bigfoots and portals. What are your opinions or what are your thoughts on Bigfoots? I first heard about it between Jessica and Barry Littleton talking about, it's always weird how people see Bigfoots and they disappear behind a tree, then you don't see them no more, where they use elementals to go through the trees as portals, or I mean, there's all
Well,
kinds of interesting subjects
the,
on that.
the weirdest thing to me, and the thing that made me start leaning that way, are the track lines. They'll just disappear, and they'll be in material where there should be a next step, and they're just gone. Um, Quick story: Relics would not have become a novel if it wasn't for my sister, my older sister. She was kind of like my mother figure. I never knew my mother, and she was 9 years older, so she was kind of like a mother figure, and she wanted me to write the novel, and was real big on me getting it done. Well, after the novel finished, she told me, okay, here's why I wanted you to write it. And they lived in White County, Arkansas, near Romance, Arkansas, and when they first moved there back in the early 70s, they were the only people on this little mountain. And one night, she had been making cookies with her two granddaughters, and she looked out. It was snowing pretty heavy. She looked out in her yard, and there were footprints in the snow. They went across the yard and around the house, and she thought, it was a person. And her husband was at work. He worked at the railroad in Little Rock, and so she closed the window blinds, made sure everything was locked. Kind of scared her. Well, when Denny, my brother-in-law, came home that night, he saw those footsteps, and he's like Joe Detective. He's out there with a gun and a flashlight. Well, he followed the footsteps around, and they were big, barefooted footprints, huge, he said. And they went to the window at the kitchen, above the kitchen sink. And he said they stopped right there. It was as if whatever it was standing there looking in the kitchen window. And he goes, and that was it. There was no tracks. There wasn't a tree there for anything to climb. He goes, they stopped there. They didn't pick up. They didn't backtrack. He goes, they just stopped right there. And that wasn't the first report like that I'd heard. And they never told. They held on to that for nearly 30 years before they told anybody about it. So I just thought, well, there's got to be an explanation. I started to ask, well, did you look up on the roof? But I wasn't going to ask that but I just find that strange. There's a story. I think it was the 1700s, somewhere in England. Have you ever heard of the Devil's Footprints that ran through that county one night? It snowed real heavy, and the steps would come up to a house or something, and they'd be on the top of the house, go over, they'd
Yeah.
come up the wall and pick up right on the other side, and they just start and they just end, and that suggests like portal or something, some kind of vortex activity where something just appears and then manifests and demanifests, I guess is the best term for it.
Yeah, I think my good friend Dennis Carroll brought that up in one of our shows that we had him on for Christmas talking about Santa Claus and Krampus and all that stuff, and I think he brought that story up then.
Is that right? Yeah, I'd never heard of Krampus until like the past year, and I was looking into that as a possible novel thing. I'm like, man, I had no idea, But then
There's so
too,
many cultures that have so many. We think of all our cryptids, Mothman, Dogman, Bigfoot, and all that. But you go to these other countries and they have stories growing up, that's kind of the same, but yet different. And
right. Yeah,
there's all kinds of them.
I grew up, my only paranormal interest was UFOs. And, I thought Bigfoot was kind of a neat subject, but it didn't interest me. So I did develop an interest for it when I started researching for the novel. But then I remember first time I heard a dog man, I'm like, what is this? And I'm like,
Okay, I haven't swallowed Bigfoot yet. I'm not ready for Dogman. So I was sitting inside, and then you started hearing about sheep squatch, and and I was like, man, where does all this stuff come from? It's just I didn't realize there were so many cryptids out there. Now you got these things, rakes, and what have you seen them things that were just like two legs walking? They kind
Yeah,
of
the crawlers,
something like that. Yeah,
yeah, the night crawlers.
and those things they get good video of those things.
Yeah, I
Whatever
think
they
that
are.
was out in like Sacramento and places like that. They were seeing them for a while, and they,
You know,
I don't know. They're weird. I mean, I don't know if the videos are real or not, but who
that's
knows?
weird. And I gotta tell you, people will tell people who had a Bigfoot encounter, well, why didn't you get a picture of it? And most encounters are pretty fleeting. And we live up, it's called the Comanche Mountains here in southeast Oklahoma. Well, we moved here from a fairly large town, Flatlands of Texas. So it's just beautiful up here to us. And there's bears. And this is all new. So the first year we're living here, I'm coming home from work one evening, and there's three bear cubs running down the road in front of me. So I stop, make sure I don't hit them. I reach down on my phone, grab it. And by the time I get it up and got the camera on, they've crossed the road and disappeared in the woods. And it's like, well, I couldn't get a picture of three bear cubs, and I wasn't scared, and I wasn't in shock, and I wasn't in disbelief. So I would imagine somebody that is, they're not going to get a picture, or if they do get a photograph, it may explain, all your blurry ones. Now I don't have an
Right.
explanation for the red circles.
I
I
mean,
want to be red circles and dicyanon God.
I, would- I would assume though, if I'm out just walking through the woods, not necessarily investigating, the first time this
Right.
happens to me that I see something, I'm not going to think about grabbing my phone. I'm thinking, flight or fight, or what do I do? Or I'm in awe of what's going on in front of me and trying to process, and I'm thinking of my safety first.
Exactly. And
Not okay, can I get a picture of this? And
that's exactly anytime I've had a weird thing happen, like I would say a paranormal um incident, I'm never thinking about it. I'm completely concentrating on what I'm doing. I'm minding my own business. I got something else on my mind, and bang, something happens, and it happens quick, and you're not ready for it. But if I could go out and spend a whole year and go out every night looking for something and probably never see it. But it's always going to be that moment when you're distracted. It's the furthest thing from your mind, and bang, there it is all of a sudden.
right. Yeah. I mean, it's a thing. I mean, everybody's different. Well, if you're a seasoned pro investigating Bigfoot, that might be different. You might be ready and have the frame of mind to do that. But if you're just out there enjoying nature or walking, and all of a sudden you get this experience, same thing with UFOs, same thing with paranormal.
Well,
You might not be equipped or ready to think that far or that fast.
well, where I live, there's a lot of Bigfoot reports, and people are always saying, "Oh, you need to get a GoPro. You need to put one on your back." I don't want to do that. I mean, I'm not really going out to look for him. I'm just taking my dog for a walk or going for a ride in the side by side. I don't want to have to every time I go out, have a camera. Now, if I was actually doing real research and you know involved in research, yes, I would do that. But I'm not going to do that any more than I'm going to
Right.
put a boot on top of my head and walk, and try not to let it fall off. But I got other things going on. you know it's I don't have time to just mess with that. you know
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Like I said,
Now,
it's just a
if
frame of
somebody
mind.
see Bigfoot every day, if somebody's saying, "Oh yeah, I see Bigfoot all the time," then I would say, "Okay, get us a picture." But just like me or my neighbor down the road or something, hey, you're going to wear this GoPro every day, everywhere. No, I'm not. I'm not doing that. You know.
Nope. Not at all. Well, we've done an hour. What else would you like to talk about, or we can?
I want to talk about
I
anything.
don't know what else to bring up. We've pretty much covered dicyanin, and the one thing that was brought up, I'll bring it, even though we weren't really talking about it. they were asking about the eclipse coming on, and I know everybody's talking about the eclipse, so we're not going anywhere to see it, but I know a lot of people are heading for that totality line, you know. So the only thing I can say is just be careful, you know, about going there. And because it was asked, you know, is it a good idea for senior citizens to flock to these? And I don't think it's a good idea for senior citizens to go anywhere that's crowded, just because of their age, and you know, you don't want anybody getting hurt.
Well, I live in the totality line. We're going to have, I think, 3 minutes of total darkness tomorrow. And people have raised a lot of hay about, well, Oklahoma's activated the or the Army National Guard, and why are they bringing National Guard in, and why are they nuclear, biological, chemical warfare troops? And oh, what's going to happen? Well, the 16 years I was in the Air Force, the last 2 years I was a nuclear, biological, chemical warfare defense instructor. So basically, I marched guys to gas chambers showing how to use their gas mask. But I've also had to teach classes on it and this and that. Well, we got nabbed for everything. You know why? Because there was no nuclear, biological, or chemical war going on. So we were they could use anywhere they wanted, and that's probably why they're using these guys. But I do want to say, this part of Oklahoma that's getting the eclipse, it's not very, very densely populated. We got a couple of small towns that'll be in the path, but our law enforcement, our emergency resources, they're thin here. And so really, and if you saw our roads and the mountains and stuff, and if crowds are flocking this area, they need the National Guard to help out if there's an emergency, just to help out if there's a wreck, the communications, anything. I lost a neighbor less than a week and a half ago, just coming down the mountains into town, and his brakes failed, and he hit not 500 feet from here, and there was we could do for him. And then a trucker suffered the same thing on the other side of the mountain last week. So these are dangerous roads, and there's a lot of people coming that aren't used to them. So that's why, really, I would like to be able to say, yeah, something really exciting or conspiratorial, but it's just plain common sense, because it takes a long time to get law enforcement or emergency services, especially here where we're at. So it's probably just common sense.
And like you said, you figure all these people are converging on all these areas, and Southern Illinois, supposedly where the X crossed from the last eclipse, when this eclipse, is going to be a hot spot, and everybody's going down to the LBL and all these places. Right. And so you're going to have a big convergence where you might not have this number of people normally. So it's going to put a strain on, like you said, resources. And so I think they're thinking ahead. And then you hear people talk about the earthquakes and, stuff going to happen during the eclipse, and, outages, and there's just all kinds of stuff. So I do agree with you. I think it's more of having the resources there and bump them up so they can handle this crowd, whether it's traffic control or, like you said, you get these many people together. Even at a concert, you get these many people together. They have fire trucks and ambulances lined up just in case something happens.
This little community, we don't have a post office. It's 17 miles the nearest gas station. It's nearly 60 miles the nearest Walmart. 24 miles to my post office so we are out in the middle of nowhere. The roads are bad. We got a little store here with a little grill, and if it's a holiday weekend, you can't go over there and sit down and get a burger. It's packed, full of Texans or people from other places. They come up. I don't blame them. It's beautiful. I moved up here for the same reason. It's beautiful, but we just don't have nothing here, and we don't have nothing. It's 24 miles to Tallahena to the north, and 20 about the same to Smithville. Smithville's really small. It's 45 miles of Broken Bow, the first really kind of good sized city. So there's not a lot in this area.
Yeah, I thought about, and we talked about maybe going down to Cahokia Mounds and be there. But you know, it's the same thing. Do I really want to go there and fight the traffic and the crowds? And I don't know if that'll be a hot spot. I think it would be, because it's close to Little Egypt in Southern Illinois, where the X is going to happen. But we're going to have 90% here just where we live, so we can be out in our backyard and experience 90%. So we're just going to stay home.
You know, it took a little getting used to live out here. You know, moved out here in the middle of nowhere, because, like, you know, if you're watching TV at night and a Domino's pizza commercial comes on, you can forget about it. There is nothing out here. So it takes a little getting used to, but I've noticed the longer I live here, the less I want to go get involved in the crowd. I mean, I won't even drive the 19 miles to Smithville to watch the fireworks on 4th of July. I don't want to get in the traffic. I don't want to get in the 20 cars coming.
Right. Just on a normal day, I don't want to go out anywhere.
Yeah, my normal day, I see more deer than people, and I've really gotten acclimated to that. I love it.
Yeah, that's about like us. Like we live in a small town, so if you want to go to a Walmart or somewhere or a shopping center, you got to travel 30, 40 miles. And we're the same way. It's like, all right, let's get ready. We'll go. We'll make a day of it and hit everything all at once and be done.
Well, yeah, that's what we do. We'll usually go on a Friday and, you know, just knock everything out. And plus, that's when we'll eat out, you know. Okay, where they got a restaurant. What do you want?
Well, John, I think we'll close it down. It was wonderful talking to you. And
You too.
I tell you what, we'll have to have you back, and we'll talk about something more relevant to your books or your research that you like to talk about. I brought up the Dicyanin glasses because I thought it was a really interesting subject, and I knew you had talked about it with Jessica, so I brought you on to talk about this. And it's still very interesting. I love the subject. I like to find out more about it.
Well, actually, I love being here, and I love the subject. I love talking about it, but I also love hearing your viewpoints. And, you know, I learned some stuff from you. So, yeah, I think if you're a writer, you're always hungry for something. You know, any information you get is something you can use later on. And I really appreciate the opportunity of being on here and enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming. We loved having you. Don't go anywhere. I'll just keep you on screen as we end this, and we'll say goodbye to chat. And thank you all for coming. We had a lot of people in here and that popped in and had some. I mean, they were mostly saying hi and stuff, and then once in a while they were talking about the same subject we were, and you know, that's always interesting to see what they say. But it's been fun, and thank you for coming. And everybody keep looking up. You know, we're talking about UFOs. Keep looking up. Keep your eyes to the sky, and send that love and peace out there to everybody, and be kind to others, and do something kind for yourself. You got to start with yourself. And we will see you next time.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.